Hey, what's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about buying real estate in 2022, specifically starting real estate in 2022. Now, there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. Nobody really knows what's going to happen, but we're going to talk about some of the possibilities. But most importantly, we're going to go step by step on what you need to do to buy your first rental property in 2022. Welcome to Money Mastery, where we help you master all things money. So first, we're going to get started talking about the goals and viewpoints of real estate. Real estate investing is different than a lot of other ways of investing simply because, as you've probably heard, it's not a very liquid investment. So when you buy an investment property, you need to understand that it's a long-term investment. It's not something that you buy today and sell next month. Before we get started talking about the steps, I want you to understand the types of income that you get from real estate investing. The most common one that you hear of all the time is cash flow, and that's the money that you receive every month in excess of your expenses, so your monthly profit. But the two that you don't hear talked about as much are appreciation and debt pay down. So as you're receiving money from your tenants, they're paying down your mortgage for you. And on average, the real estate market goes up by about 3% every year. As we've seen in the last couple years, it's gone up by way more than that. And that's all appreciation that you can receive as soon as you refinance or sell the property. So let's get into the very first thing that you have to do to buy a rental property, and that is get your down payment together. You should already have your budget built. You should be saving money. And by the time you're watching this video, hopefully you already have a plan to get started. And you're just looking for a little bit of extra guidance. So make sure that you have your down payment. Now, how much do you need for a down payment? Most lenders are going to ask for 15 to 25% down on any rental investment property that you're buying. Now, if you're using a strategy like an FHA loan or something where you're buying a multi-unit property and you're going to live there, you can get away with a much lower down payment. But you want to make sure that you have a down payment ready before you start this whole process. So this means if you want a $100,000 rental property, you're going to need $15,000 to $25,000 in your pocket before you even think about talking to a lender. And that takes us to the next step of buying a rental property. Go find a lender. Now talk to several different lenders. They're going to offer you different rates. They're going to have different requirements. Talk to several different people. Now there's a reason that this is the absolute first thing you do. You haven't looked at any properties yet. You haven't figured out exactly what you want to buy yet. You're just going to a lender so you can figure out what you're able to buy. A lender will tell you your limits, what you can qualify for, and they'll give you a good idea of what kind of payments you're going to be looking at every month. You're going to need that as you're analyzing properties and looking at your budget. Once you've talked to your lender and you know what you're approved for, now you get to do the fun part, finding a deal. Now this is a part of the process that gets hugely overlooked. Not only are you trying to find the property that you're going to buy, but you want to find properties that are similar to what you want to buy. And the reason you want to do this is because the more deals that you look at in the area that you're searching for, the more you're going to know about the property that you're buying. And what I mean by that is, when you're buying a property, you want to know how it ranks among other properties in the area. You want to know for the price that it is, does it have everything that all the other properties have? Maybe you're getting a really good deal and it has everything that the higher priced homes have. And so in that case, you're really making out on it. Now, something that I hear a lot of people talking about that I do get a little concerned about, especially for beginning investors, is finding real estate deals out of state. Now, I'd be lying if I said that people don't make a lot of money doing that. It's definitely a profitable way to invest in real estate. But before you go that route, make sure you understand that there are a lot more risks involved when you're going out of state. The biggest one is that you're not there to personally oversee it. So I wouldn't recommend this route unless you have somebody that you really trust that can look after the property for you or even inspect it and check it out before you buy it. The reason for this is because when you're not there to actually check it out, you're relying on what people tell you. Personally, I prefer to look for deals that are within an hour or two of where I'm at. I don't necessarily need to be in the same town, but I want to be able to go check it out if something does happen and I need to be there. Somebody who can really help you out with this is a good real estate agent. And when I say good, I don't mean someone who's really good at selling houses. I mean somebody who's really good at working with investors. Find a real estate agent who invests in property themselves. They'll know what you're looking for. They'll know how to help you find the deals. And I hear a lot of people complain, well, maybe that real estate agent is going to take the best deals for themselves. You know, they may have first pick at the deals, but they can't buy everything they see. So yeah, every once in a while they'll pluck a good deal out of the mix, but most likely if they're working with people like you, it's because they need to make money as a real estate agent, and they're going to find you good deals and they're going to help you to analyze those deals. As far as the price of the houses you're looking at, find out exactly what you want to buy and see kind of what the average price is for that, and then find a house that's just a little bit lower that has everything that the average house value includes. So now we're going to move on to the next step, which is finding the type of property you want to invest in. And by this I mean, are you buying a single family home? Are you finding a duplex, a triplex? Are you trying to find an apartment complex? It all depends on your goals and what you're trying to do. If you're just starting out, I would recommend doing 4 units or less. And the reason for this is it's going to be much easier for you to get financed. You can use the same mortgage loan for these as you would for a primary single family home. The only difference is you're going to have to put a bigger down payment down. Once you've figured out what you want to invest in, you need to figure out how much money you're going to be making. So at this point, you've already looked at all the different properties in the area, you've figured out the type of property you want. Now start to look at the cash flow of what you need to be making off of that property. Now cash flow is the amount of money you make every month after you've paid all of your expenses. The way that you figure out your cash flow is you take all of your expenses, so your mortgage, your insurance, your interest that you're paying, all of the expenses that you're going to have to pay on the property, and subtract those from your rental revenue that you're bringing in from your tenant every month. Make sure that you're also including in your expenses vacancy. You're going to have vacancies every once in a while, and you want to make sure that you've budgeted that into your income as well so that you don't get caught by surprise when something like that does happen. Also budget a little extra for miscellaneous expenses, like if a sink starts to leak and a plumber's got to come fix something. One of the easiest ways I've seen to determine if a property will cash flow is called the 1% rule. And basically that says that if you have a property for $100,000, you should be collecting 1% or $1,000 a month in rental earnings. If you're able to meet the 1% rule, then you're probably going to cash flow on the property, and that can be a really quick way to sort out the deals that are just too expensive for you. Keep in mind that every property is a good deal at the right price. When you've determined that a property will cash flow for you, make an offer. After you've analyzed your cash flow, you should know what price you need to make it cash flow. So if what they're asking is too much, offer them less. A lot of people are scared to do that in 2022, and you will probably be rejected. But you know what? There's a chance that you will get accepted. A good example that I'll share is somebody that I know bought a house actually just down the street from where I live, where they wanted $70,000 for the house. It was in bad condition, needed a lot of work, but easily could have been sold for well over $70,000. And they offered them $35,000. And you know what? They took it. Now, I know most places don't have houses that sell for $70,000, but the point is they offered 50% of what they were asking, and the seller accepted it because they just needed to get rid of the house. You don't know what the situation is behind the house. Just make an offer. Make lots of offers. Expect a lot of them to get rejected, but every once in a while you'll find that person that gives you a 50% off deal on a house. Now, if you're smart, what you're going to do when you buy a house is you'll have bought an older home, something that needs some updating but has good bones. Now, you hear that a lot, good bones. And what that means is that the things that you don't necessarily see, the less sexy items, they're good, meaning the roof has no issues, plumbing has no issues, heating and cooling has no issues, there's no cracked windows, there's no major things that have to be renovated. All that's left is basically minor cosmetic expenses. These could be things like making a kitchen look more updated, making a bathroom look more updated, maybe replacing a floor. They seem like expensive things, but compared to, rewiring the electrical in a house, they're actually very low cost updates, and they really change the amount of money you can bring in through your rental. Just keep in mind as you're updating your home that it needs to be renter proof, and what this means is you don't want to put things in the home that you would want in your home. You want to put things in the home that are nice, that serve a solid purpose, and that will not be ruined by tenants. While a lot of tenants are really good, there's a lot of tenants that don't care about your property because it's not theirs. They're not going to be the one to fix it. The only skin they have in the game is the deposit that you collected from them up front. Alright, so if you've done everything up to this point, you've made an offer on the house that you found that you know cash flows in a good area, it's time to get an inspection. You've closed the deal at this point, you've already had your negotiations to settle on a price, now you need to get the home inspected. Now, this is an optional part of buying a home, but I highly recommend it. An inspector will find so many things that you never would have seen just by looking. Keep in mind with that though, that a brand new house is still going to have issues that an inspector finds. That's their job. So don't freak out when the inspector comes back and tells you that there's several leaks and things that are going to need fixed. What you should do instead is add up how much it's going to cost to get all of that fixed and take it to the seller. The inspection period can be like a second negotiation phase. Take all of those issues to the seller and ask them for either a credit or a reduced price. Everybody thinks this is a little bit scary, but a lot of times they'll give you something. Probably not all of what you asked for, but they'll give you something. Don't be scared if the listing says sold as is, because everybody says that. Just ask. You don't know what the answer is until you ask. Now, a big scary thing that a lot of people talk about with buying rental properties is the closing costs. So closing costs are the fees associated with the actual process of buying the home. So this is like your escrow fees, lender fees, real estate fees if you're selling the property. If you don't have the cash on hand to pay your closing costs, you have a few options. You don't necessarily have to cough that money up yourself. One of the options is asking the seller to cover the closing costs. In the current market, that may not be a viable option, but another option that I used when I purchased one of mine was I offered $5,000 more, because that's about what my closing costs were going to be, and I asked the seller to pay for the closing costs. So technically, it was included in my loan. I gave them $5,000 more, but they covered the closing costs at the sale. You can usually expect your closing costs as a buyer to be about 1% of your property, about 1 to 3%. So congratulations, you've now closed on the home. It's officially in your name. You're losing money. And what I mean by that is nobody's renting your house yet. So you're not making any money. You're losing money every day that house sits in your name and not on the market being rented out. Now, if you bought a house that needs renovations, which I would recommend because then you can automatically build up sweat equity in the home, you need to get started on those renovations as soon as possible. Try to get a contractor involved before you actually close on the house and get 3 contractors to give you bids so you know that you're getting a competitive price. You want your renovations to go as quickly as possible because every day that you hold it, you're losing money, like I said before. Now, I used to manage a restoration company, so we were renovating homes that had flood damage or fire damage. But basically, it's about the same concept of us going in, tearing somebody's house apart, putting it back together. It's the same thing that most of the contractors you're dealing with are going to be doing and have experience with. And I know from managing those companies that we're going to take care of the people who complain the most. You're not the only customer that contractor has most likely, so they're going to be moving their guys around to different jobs. So make sure that you're showing up to your job on a regular basis and making sure that they've held up to what they committed to do. If they committed to have it done by a certain time frame, you need to be there very regularly, hopefully every day, to make sure that they're actually making progress on the job. And if they're not there, call them. They'll take care of the person that complains the most. It's what they signed up to do. Just hold them to it. You don't need to feel bad about that. Yes, it was something that bugged me when I was having to juggle my guys around. But you know what? It worked. We took care of the people who complained. Now to the absolute best part. Rent out your property. This is where you're finally going to start to see your money coming back to you. The first thing to do to get your house rented out is pictures. Get good pictures. It's such an underrated thing, but if you have good professional pictures on your listing, it's going to catch a lot more eyes than somebody who has the exact same property but took the pictures on their smartphone. And then list your property in as many places as you can. Craigslist, Facebook, Zillow, the MLS if you can. However you can list it, get it listed so you can bring as much traffic to it as possible. Then when people start to reach out about it, respond immediately because these people are in the moment. They're seeing the pictures. They're excited about this maybe being their next home. It's a very personal moment for them, so make sure that you're responding quickly while they're still emotionally engaged. If you take hours or even the next day to respond to inquiries, then they're probably just going to go find something else and get emotionally attached to that. Once you've gone through this whole process, it's time for you to start working on your next rental property. Keep collecting the money and move on to the next property. Now in 2022, it can be hard to find all these different things and the market's really scary. We don't know if it's going to crash or not. So there are some tips I have for buying real estate in 2022. The first tip is find deals. The further below median price you can find a property, the more of a buffer you're going to have between you and the market price of the property. If you've ever read Rich Dad Poor Dad, you've heard of Robert Kiyosaki, and one of my favorite sayings that he has is, the money is made when you buy. When you buy your real estate deal, that's when your money is made. And if you're buying with a long-term view and you have a property with solid cash flow, then you don't need to worry about the market tanking. Real estate crashes are just simply an opportunity to be able to pick up more properties at a cheaper price. The properties that you already have in your portfolio should be safe from a market crash because you're not planning to sell them. If you put 20% down, that means that the market needs to come down by 20% just for your property to be breaking even with what you owe on it. And it's going to be continually getting paid down. But even if you end up upside down in your loan, it's not the end of the world as long as you're still cash flowing. Nobody is holding a gun to your head forcing you to sell when the market crashes. In fact, that's the worst time to sell. So just hold on, keep the property, keep it cash flowing, and then make sure that you're ready to buy more properties so that when the market goes back up, you're just making even more money. This is a process that you should be rinsing and repeating over and over again as many times as you need to reach your financial goals. Imagine how life-changing it would be if you bought one property a year for the next 10 years. That means that 10 years from now, you have 10 cash-flowing properties. And if some of those were duplexes, triplexes, or fourplexes, you could have 15, 20, 25 properties cash-flowing within 10 years. If you never touched your real estate portfolio after that and waited until you retired in another 20 or 30 years, most, if not all of those are going to be paid off. And now you have probably $1 million or $2 million worth of real estate just sitting there cash flowing every month with no mortgage payments. That's a heck of a retirement. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I'll answer them for sure. If you haven't already, smash that like button and subscribe to learn more about all things money.